Few war films have ever felt as raw and haunting as Platoon. Born from Oliver Stone's own battlefield scars, the movie abandoned Hollywood gloss to reveal the chaos, exhaustion, and moral strain of Vietnam. Behind the camera, the cast endured brutal conditions, improvised survival, and lived through moments so real they blurred the line between acting and memory. These 25 secrets uncover the hidden struggles, creative risks, and lasting legacy of the film that forever changed how we see war on screen. Number 1. Oliver Stone's real combat trauma. The emotional weight of Platoon didn't come from imagination alone. It was born out of lived experience. Before becoming a filmmaker, Oliver Stone enlisted in the U.S. Army and served as an infantryman in Vietnam between 1967 and 1968. He fought with the 25th Infantry Division and later the 1st Cavalry Division, experiencing frontline combat firsthand. Stone was wounded twice in battle, earning a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. These experiences left him with memories of exhaustion, fear, and survival that would later shape his storytelling. The film's two most memorable figures, Sergeant Elias and Sergeant Barnes, were inspired by real men Stone served under. One a protective leader, the other a cold, intimidating presence. Writing Platoon was his way of confronting those scars. He began the script in 1971, only a few years after returning from war. The result wasn't just a war movie, but a personal confession that blurred the line between cinema and testimony. Every firefight, every desperate glance, carried traces of his own trauma, giving the film a chilling authenticity no fiction could match. Number 2. The script sent to Jim Morrison. Long before Platoon became a reality, the script had an unusual path. In 1971, Oliver Stone drafted an early version of the story, while still wrestling with his own wartime memories. Believing it needed a voice both intense and poetic, he mailed the script directly to Jim Morrison, the lead singer of The Doors, hoping he would take on the role of Chris Taylor. Morrison, however, never responded. Shortly afterward, he passed away in Paris, leaving Stone's script without a champion. For years, the pages sat in limbo, dismissed by studios and left unread by most of Hollywood. This early setback might have ended the project entirely, but Stone refused to let it die. The Morrison connection became a footnote in the film's history, a reminder of how close the script came to fading away. In a strange twist, The Doors' music would later be used in Stone's films, symbolically connecting the singer he once hoped would star with the director's later work. Number 3. A decade of rejection. The journey from script to screen was anything but smooth. For nearly 10 years, Oliver Stone struggled to convince studios to take on Platoon. Hollywood executives feared that audiences weren't ready for a film that abandoned the typical action-driven war story. At the time, the industry leaned toward more stylized portrayals, with clear heroes and patriotic undertones, making Stone's raw vision a risky investment. Several studios outright dismissed the script, calling it too grim and commercially unappealing. Some even suggested that he rewrite it to resemble the popular action thrillers of the 1980s, where Vietnam was portrayed more as a backdrop for heroics than a battlefield of moral conflict. Stone refused to compromise, determined to present the chaos and confusion exactly as he remembered it. This decade of rejection became one of the film's defining tests. By holding firm to his original vision, Stone ensured that when Platoon finally did reach the screen, it carried an honesty that audiences could feel. The long wait proved essential, allowing the film to arrive at a cultural moment when viewers were finally ready to confront the darker truths of war. Number 4. A $6 million gamble. When Platoon finally found financial backing, it wasn't from a major studio, but from Hemdale, a small independent company known for risky projects. The budget was set at just $6 million, a fraction of what most war films demanded in the 1980s. This meant every dollar had to be stretched, forcing the crew to improvise with real locations and natural lighting, rather than costly Hollywood sets. Oliver Stone adapted by trimming scenes, working with handheld cameras, and using the Philippine jungle as both backdrop and obstacle. Entire sequences were filmed guerrilla style, without the luxury of extensive rehearsals or elaborate staging. Instead of expensive special effects, the team relied on practical explosions and carefully timed pyrotechnics. What seemed like a limitation became a strength. The stripped-down production gave Platoon a raw, immediate texture that no big-budget Polish could replicate. The gamble paid off in a way few could have predicted, transforming a low-cost, high-risk project into one of the most acclaimed war films ever made. Number 5. Pentagon Refusal. When Oliver Stone sought assistance from the U.S. military, he was firmly turned away. The Pentagon rejected the Platoon script, labeling it unflattering to American forces. Unlike other war productions that received access to helicopters, uniforms, and bases, this film was given nothing. The refusal forced Stone and his team to get creative. Military equipment had to be sourced through unconventional channels, including the Philippine Army, and uniforms were carefully pieced together to replicate the era. Even helicopters, which became a striking visual element of the movie, had to be borrowed elsewhere. In hindsight, the rejection may have been a blessing. Without official involvement, Platoon was free from outside influence, allowing Stone to portray the chaos, tension, and moral struggles of war without compromise. What began as a setback instead reinforced the movie's reputation for authenticity and independence. Number 6. Filming amid revolution. While the cameras rolled in the Philippine jungle, history unfolded just miles away. The production of Platoon coincided with the 1986 revolution that ended Ferdinand Marcos's decades-long rule. Tanks and soldiers filled the streets of Manila as political unrest swept through the nation, creating a backdrop of uncertainty for the cast and crew. Despite the chaos, Oliver Stone pressed forward, staging firefights in the jungle while real gunfire occasionally echoed in the distance. The line between fiction and reality blurred, heightening the intensity of the shoot and reminding everyone that danger wasn't just part of the script. For the actors, the political turmoil reinforced the gravity of what they were portraying. Immersed in both stage combat and a country in upheaval, their performances carried a raw edge that couldn't have been faked on a Hollywood backlot. The coincidence of filming amid revolution gave Platoon an atmosphere of authenticity that no set could ever replicate. Number 7. Boot Camp from Hell. To prepare the actors for the brutal reality of combat, Oliver Stone enlisted Vietnam veteran Dale Dye to run a punishing 2-week boot camp. The cast wasn't treated as pampered Hollywood stars, but as raw recruits. They dug foxholes, lived on rations, and endured surprise night ambushes in the sweltering Philippine jungle. Sleep was scarce, discomfort was constant, and Dye made sure the actors felt a fraction of what soldiers experienced in Vietnam. The training was so intense that several cast members admitted they nearly quit. For Charlie Sheen, the experience was especially disorienting, since Dye deliberately left him confused and isolated, mirroring the lost perspective of his character, Chris Taylor. By the time cameras rolled, the actors were not simply performing soldiers. They had lived the exhaustion, the dirt, and the bonds forged under hardship. The boot camp blurred the line between actor and role, giving Platoon its raw, visceral authenticity. Number 8. Dale Dye's cameo. The man who whipped the cast into shape didn't just stay behind the scenes. Dale Dye, the Vietnam veteran who led the grueling boot camp, also stepped in front of the camera. He played Captain Harris, a hard-edged officer whose brief appearances added an extra layer of realism to Platoon. For the actors, seeing their strict trainer suddenly transformed into a character was surreal. Dye's presence on set wasn't just about his cameo. He continued to monitor their performances, making sure combat tactics, weapon handling, and squad movements looked authentic. His military expertise became a safeguard against Hollywood shortcuts. Stone later admitted that, without Dye, the film's battle scenes wouldn't have carried the same credibility. The cameo was more than a bit part. It symbolized Dye's influence over the entire production, ensuring Platoon captured the grit and discipline of soldiers in Vietnam. Number 9. Filmed in chronological order. Most movies are filmed out of sequence, but Oliver Stone took a very different approach with Platoon. The entire production was shot in chronological order, mirroring the emotional journey of the soldiers. As filming progressed, the cast grew increasingly exhausted, disheveled, and mentally worn down, just like their characters. This rare technique meant the actors weren't just pretending to fall apart. They were actually living through the physical and emotional toll of the story as it unfolded. By the final battle scenes, the exhaustion on their faces wasn't makeup or acting. It was the result of weeks in the harsh jungle conditions. The decision added a layer of authenticity that audiences could feel. Viewers weren't just watching a performance. They were witnessing the cast gradually transform alongside the narrative. It was a storytelling gamble that paid off, helping Platoon stand apart from other war films of its era. Number 10. Borrowed gear from Filipino military. With no support from the Pentagon, Oliver Stone had to get creative in bringing Platoon to life. The solution came from the Philippine Army, which stepped in to provide equipment that would have otherwise been impossible to secure. Real Huey helicopters, authentic military vehicles, and even Filipino soldiers were used to stand in as American troops. This collaboration gave the film a sense of scale and authenticity that would have been difficult to fake on a limited budget. The helicopters weren't movie props. They were the same models that had flown in real combat, adding a chilling realism to the battle scenes. By relying on the Philippine military, Stone turned what could have been a crippling obstacle into one of the movie's greatest assets. It was a perfect example of how resourcefulness and determination elevated Platoon from a low-budget risk into a war epic that felt strikingly genuine. Number 11. Real Bugs, Real Jungle. The harsh Philippine jungle wasn't just a backdrop. It became one of the toughest challenges of the entire production. Cast and crew faced relentless heat, humidity, and an endless swarm of insects. Jungle rot, infections, and heat exhaustion spread quickly, making daily life on set a battle of endurance. The dangers weren't just background discomforts. Forrest Whitaker injured his hand on barbed wire during a scene, while Johnny Depp nearly collapsed from fever brought on by the tropical conditions. Every day tested the resilience of the actors as much as their characters. Instead of breaking the production, these struggles made the performances more believable. When audiences see the soldiers swatting at bugs, sweating through their uniforms, or stumbling through mud, they aren't just watching acting. They're seeing the reality of filming in an unforgiving environment. Number 12. Helmet graffiti. One of the subtle but powerful touches in Platoon came from the helmets worn by the soldiers. Instead of standard issue gear, the actors were encouraged to personalize them with slogans, drawings, and small details, just as real Vietnam soldiers often did. This added layer of authenticity gave each character a distinct personality even before they spoke a word. Johnny Depp, for example, scribbled Sherilyn across his helmet, a tribute to his girlfriend at the time, actress Sherilyn Fenn. Other cast members added cryptic phrases, doodles, and rebellious marks that reflected the mindset of young men caught in the chaos of war. These details might seem small, but they added realism that viewers absorbed on a subconscious level. The helmets became more than costumes. They were extensions of the soldiers' identities, reminding the audience that these were not just characters, but reflections of real young men who fought in Vietnam. Number 13. Rain changed the film's look. Unpredictable tropical storms in the Philippine jungle constantly disrupted the filming schedule, forcing Oliver Stone and his crew to adapt on the fly. What might have been a nightmare for most productions became an unexpected gift, shaping the visual identity of Platoon. Instead of delaying scenes or waiting for the skies to clear, Stone leaned into the chaos. Actors were filmed slogging through thick mud, struggling against downpours, and fighting in water-soaked terrain. The rain heightened the sense of exhaustion and despair, turning every firefight into something raw and unforgiving. These weather challenges gave the movie a documentary-like realism that no amount of planning could have achieved. The gritty, rain-drenched look not only mirrored the unpredictability of combat, but also gave audiences the sense that they were right there in the mud alongside the soldiers. Number 14. Opening ambush based on Stone's trauma. The film's harrowing opening ambush wasn't just a work of imagination. It was rooted in Oliver Stone's own experience during his tour in Vietnam. As a young infantryman, he survived a sudden ambush where he was struck in both the neck and foot. That memory stayed with him, shaping the authenticity of Platoon's first scenes. Charlie Sheen's disoriented performance was no accident. Stone deliberately directed him to appear lost, confused, and overwhelmed, mirroring the sense of shock and panic he remembered from that terrifying night. This decision added a deeply personal layer to Sheen's portrayal of Chris Taylor. By recreating his trauma on screen, Stone transformed personal pain into storytelling power. Viewers weren't just watching a scripted firefight, they were witnessing an echo of real combat horror, filtered through the eyes of someone who had lived it. Number 15. Elias's death in one take. One of the most haunting images in Platoon is the death of Sergeant Elias, running through the jungle with arms outstretched as helicopters fly overhead. That unforgettable moment was captured in a single take. The scene was so complex, with explosions, helicopters, and squibs timed to Willem Dafoe's movements, that the crew knew they had only one real chance to get it right. Dafoe threw himself into the moment, sprinting through the chaos without hesitation. His instinctive gesture of raising his arms created an almost biblical image, one that has since become one of cinema's most iconic frames. The fact that it was filmed only once gave the performance an unrepeatable energy. Instead of rehearsed precision, viewers see raw desperation and tragic beauty, qualities that have etched Elias's death into film history. Number 16. Music anachronism. A small but notable detail in Platoon comes from the music playing in the background of a key scene. The soldiers are shown listening to Merle Haggard's Okie from Muskogee, a song that wasn't released until 1969. Yet, the film's setting is 1967, making the inclusion historically inaccurate. Oliver Stone admitted this was a deliberate choice. He valued the cultural resonance of the track over strict historical accuracy. The song had become a symbol of the era's divided views on patriotism and counterculture. So, its presence helped audiences instantly connect to the period's atmosphere. This subtle decision highlights how filmmaking often balances fact with emotional truth. While the date may not line up, the feeling it evokes fits perfectly, reminding viewers that war films are as much about memory and mood as they are about exact timelines. Number 17. Emilio Estevez was the first choice. Casting for the role of Chris Taylor almost went in a very different direction. Before Charlie Sheen was chosen, Oliver Stone originally wanted Emilio Estevez, Sheen's older brother, to star in Platoon. The plan was set, but production delays forced Estevez to drop out, leaving the role suddenly open. The timing turned out to be pivotal. Stone turned to Charlie Sheen, who at the time was still a rising actor searching for a breakout role. His intense and vulnerable performance became the defining moment of his career, cementing him as a major Hollywood name. This twist of fate gave the film one of its most iconic elements. Had Emilio Estevez played Chris, the emotional weight and energy could have been entirely different, showing how chance often shapes the final version of a classic movie. Number 18. Other stars who passed. Before the final cast was locked in, several well-known actors were considered for roles in Platoon, but ultimately declined. Keanu Reeves, Mickey Rourke, Kevin Costner, and William Peterson were all approached. Each had different reasons for turning it down, ranging from concerns about the script's heavy tone to personal connections to the Vietnam War. One of the most notable cases was Kevin Costner. He reportedly worried about how the film might affect his brother, who had served in Vietnam, and chose not to participate. Keanu Reeves, on the other hand, was still early in his career and felt the story's violence wasn't the right fit for him at the time. While it's fascinating to imagine how different the film might have been with one of them in the cast, the choices ultimately paved the way for breakout performances from Charlie Sheen, Willem Dafoe, and Tom Berenger, actors who made the film unforgettable. Number 19. Stone's cameo in the battle. Oliver Stone left his personal mark on Platoon, not just as its director and writer, but as a brief on-screen presence. During the climactic firefight, he appears as a battalion commander, leading men in the chaos of battle. The cameo was easy to miss, but for Stone, it carried a deep meaning. Having served in Vietnam, Stone used the role to reconnect with his memories of being on the ground as a young soldier. It wasn't about recognition, but about authenticity, putting himself back into the world he was recreating for the screen. This subtle inclusion shows how personal the film truly was for him. It wasn't just a war story, it was his war story. By stepping into the frame, Stone symbolically blurred the line between director and soldier, between storyteller and survivor. Number 20. Stone shocked by success. When Platoon was finally released, Oliver Stone couldn't quite believe what was happening. After years of rejection from studios, he suddenly saw long lines forming outside theaters across the country. For a filmmaker who had struggled for 15 years to bring the story to life, the sight was almost surreal. Stone even recalled driving past theaters just to watch the crowds. The film, once considered too risky, had become a cultural event. Viewers were talking about it, critics were debating it, and it was clear the movie had struck a chord far deeper than anyone expected. The success wasn't just financial, it was emotional. For Stone, it meant that his painful memories had been transformed into something audiences could connect with, proving that deeply personal stories could also resonate universally. Number 21, box office triumph. The financial success of Platoon was as stunning as its critical reception. Made on a modest $6 million budget, the film went on to gross over $138 million worldwide. In the United States, it finished as the third highest-grossing film of 1986, behind only Top Gun and Crocodile Dundee. This was remarkable for a war movie with such a raw and unflinching tone. Audiences didn't just watch it once, many returned to experience it again, and word of mouth drove its momentum at the box office. For a project once dismissed by Hollywood executives, the numbers prove just how strongly it connected with viewers. The financial triumph ensured that Stone would have the freedom to make more ambitious films. It also showed studios that audiences were ready for difficult, emotionally charged stories, opening the door for more daring projects in the years to follow. Number 22, 4 Oscar wins. Recognition from the Academy sealed Platoon's place in film history. At the 1987 Oscars, the movie won 4 major awards: Best Picture, Best Director for Oliver Stone, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound. It was a sweeping validation for a film that had struggled to get made for so many years. The cast also received recognition, with both Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Their duel as Sergeant Barnes and Sergeant Elias became one of the most compelling rivalries ever depicted in a war film, and the nominations underscored just how vital their performances were to the film's impact. These honors not only elevated Stone's career, but also proved that a brutally realistic Vietnam War story could resonate with both audiences and critics. The Oscar wins gave the film cultural legitimacy and cemented its reputation as one of the defining war dramas of all time. Number 23, inducted into film history. Over the years, Platoon has earned more than just awards. It has been enshrined as a piece of cinematic history. The American Film Institute ranked it among the greatest war films ever made, placing it alongside classics that define the genre. In 2019, the Library of Congress selected the movie for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry. This honor is reserved for films considered culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, ensuring that Platoon will be safeguarded for future generations. Such recognition reflects not only its artistry, but also its enduring power to spark conversation. By capturing the raw reality of Vietnam, the film continues to influence war dramas and remains an essential reference point in American cinema. Number 24, mixed veteran reactions. When Platoon reached theaters, its raw realism struck a chord with many Vietnam veterans. Some praised the film for finally showing the chaos and exhaustion they had lived through, calling it one of the most authentic depictions ever put on screen. However, not every veteran embraced it. Some objected to the portrayals of officer corruption and substance use among soldiers, feeling that these elements cast an unfair light on their service. This divide highlighted how difficult it was to capture a war as complex and painful as Vietnam in a single story. The film ultimately sparked a national conversation about how the conflict should be remembered. By reflecting both admiration and criticism, Platoon ensured that its legacy would remain not only as a piece of cinema, but also as a touchstone in America's collective memory of the war. Number 25, the first of a trilogy. While Platoon stood powerfully on its own, Oliver Stone envisioned it as just the beginning. He would later return to the Vietnam War through 2 more films, Born on the 4th of July and Heaven and Earth. Together, these works became known as his Vietnam War trilogy. Each film explored a different dimension of the conflict. Born on the 4th of July followed the struggles of a wounded veteran adjusting to life back home, while Heaven and Earth presented the war from a Vietnamese woman's perspective. In contrast, Platoon had captured the immediate chaos of combat. By weaving these 3 stories, Stone offered audiences a sweeping examination of war and its aftermath, through the eyes of soldiers, civilians, and those caught between. the trilogy remains a defining achievement of his career, cementing his reputation as one of cinema's most unflinching storytellers. Platoon reshaped how cinema portrays war, stripping away glamour, exposing chaos, and revealing the emotional cost of combat. For Oliver Stone, it was a deeply personal confession. For audiences, it became a groundbreaking revelation that redefined how Vietnam would be remembered on screen. Its legacy still lingers, not just as an award-winning film, but as a cultural milestone that challenged perceptions and sparked conversations worldwide. By blending raw authenticity with unforgettable performances, Platoon remains a powerful reminder of cinema's ability to confront history head-on. If you enjoyed uncovering these secrets, hit like and subscribe for more hidden Hollywood stories. Which moment from Platoon stays with you the most? The tense opening ambush, Elias's haunting final run, or Barnes's menacing presence? Let us know in the comments below.